Welcome everyone to Monday night. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's only time for one thing and one thing only, and that is Pommy Ponders Live. And this week, I'm joined by probably one of my favourites to co-host things with. He's on a few things on Pommy and Oz and Blue Abroad. The great man himself, one of the only podcasts I listen to every week, and that is Ian from the Navy Blue Corner. How are you diddling, Ian?
Mate, far too kind. Doing very, very well. It's been a great week of footy. Even better, being a Carlton supporter, it's great to get the win. But I was actually down at my mates in Leongatha with a few, so it was a big weekend of watching just about every single game of footy. So it's been the perfect week to now jump on with the amount of insight I got. Probably the most footy I've watched in a long time.
Is he a Carlton fan?
I was with Essendon supporters and a Brisbane supporter and a Collingwood supporter. It was mayhem. So it was good to be the only Carlton supporter there with the big win over GWS.
I actually find watching the game with opposition fans more fun because they want you to lose. So it brings out that hatred inside you when you win.
Oh, 100%. And the banter was going non-stop throughout every single game. So, yeah, it was a wild weekend for sure.
Well, I mean, Ian, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. We've got an interesting topic because this came my way. So me and my football mates in the UK, we often debate this about footballers because I think the best player in the league is the most objective argument in the world. Now, I'm putting it to you in chat that I always judge my best players. I think, could they do it for the shittest side in the league and stand out, and the good side? And the examples I'll use are someone like Haaland. Yes, he does it for City. Stick him in Luton. Is he going to do it? I don't think he will. So based on your criteria and chat as well, what do you look for in the best player when you're trying to work that out? What are you looking for?
Yeah, it's obviously probably the biggest and hardest question in this sport. And everyone's going to come up with their own criteria and their own answers from it. And there's a lot of answers it could be. I think one of the first things I always try to look at this in is, if we were to end all the rosters that we have at the moment, start from scratch, and the bottom team gets to the number one pick, it's almost like, who are they wanting right now? Who is that most valuable player that you kind of can't replicate anywhere else? And I'm big on sort of that generating scores and the score involvement. So if I'm looking at a midfielder, I'm looking at someone that they're allowing scores to happen, whether they're kicking them themselves, it can go forward, or they are sort of the starting of that chain, or probably around that sort of key forward as well. That person that there's not a lot of them that don't grow on trees. So yeah, I'm all about the who can create the most scores.
I like that, yeah, because me and my mate, we had a discussion, and he said to me, it has to be a midfielder. So, and his argument, right, in the pub was a midfielder is involved defensively and attacking. So he was like, can't be a forward, because he was like, a forward relies on the midfielders, right? And then one of my other mates, he said it had to be a backman, right? Because he was like, backmen are costing you wins, whether you're rubbish or you're good. So I always think it's a good thing. But one of the criteria I look at, and Maz has led me onto it, I think someone like Cripps fits the bill. And I'll tell you for why. When we were rubbish, he just won the ball. Incredible defensively. And then I look at your career progression, your ability to learn, evolve. And I think over the last 2 years, he's gone from that contested beast to add layers of attack, to add layers of leadership. And I look at Bontempelli, who most people say to me is the best player. I haven't seen that growth from Bont in the last 3 years where I have from Cripps. So that always says to me that goes on your side. If I don't see any evolution, I question it. And I use Messi and Ronaldo as an example. They have constantly evolved their games. As they've got older, they've adapted to age. So I'd say Cripper is probably the most underrated player when we have the best player in the league.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. His name definitely gets thrown out there. I'd say that Bont tends to be the one that everyone always says, and he does fit a lot of that criteria that I tend to look for. He wins a lot of the ball, gets those clearances, but he's able to put it on the scoreboard himself and then set things up as well. And Cripper, what I guess his argument can maybe go towards him over others is he's been able to do it in such a horrifically bad team where probably a lot of the others that are in this discussion have kind of been in decent teams the whole time, whereas Cripps really for long stretches was the only thing that Carlton had. Being a Carlton supporter, every game you'd go to the football and you're watching just for him and what he's able to do. The amount of games he has won from literally carrying the team on his back, and something that probably gets spoken about a lot in Carlton circles this year is that selflessness we've probably seen of Paddy Cripps this season. Obviously, this week you see the best of him offensively and what he can do, but there's parts of his game that he's stripped back a little bit and just tried to do the simple things and be that extractor rather than having to do the flashy stuff that we've seen Hollywood Cripps do over the years. And that kind of leadership as well that's developed. Those are more added qualities that you can definitely say that Cripper is that player this year, averaging 27 disposals, 6.3 clearances, and getting those 4 goals in 6 games is amazing. You know, probably at the moment, the most informed player is an Isaac Heaney. You know, he's first for score involvements, averaging 28 disposals, 6.5 clearances, 1.5 goals a game. I need to see it over a longer period of time to say that, yes, Heaney now is the best player in the league. On form, he is at the moment, but I think longevity, you got to look at those guys like Cripper, Bont, even Petrarca, you know, and he's still doing it at this stage with maybe some elements around him still not being the best, not having Brayshaw. Clary hasn't been amazing as well. But I think those are the kind of names that need to be in this conversation at the moment from longevity point of view.
Mate, I agree. Do you think as well, because like Yuval, good friend of the channel and yours, shout out to Yuval, he says Cripps more of an extractor rather than a destroyer. Do you also think some players get pigeonholed when we talk about the best because they're looking for sexy? And I'm more of a rugged, efficient, right? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Ruthless efficiency. Like, I know, to me, Golden, you watch Golden, he's sexy to watch. He dances around, takes the piss out of players. Walsh, incredibly talented. He makes it look so easy. Pendlebury, Paul Hill has said that. But I do think sometimes we underrate ugly, and it's ruthlessly efficient, isn't it? And if I was a coach and I was starting from the bottom, say I'm Tasmania, I'm choosing Cripps over Walsh all day if I'm building my team, because I need someone to get the ball out for Walsh to be Walsh. I don't want Walsh getting the ball out. And I think you're seeing the skill of Walsh now because we've got Hewitt and Cripps to get the ball out so he can be sexy. He doesn't have to get his hands as dirty as he did 2 years ago.
Yeah, we always rate the flashy types of things. It's why the goals are always that sexy part, the inside 50s that you're saying with a guy like Walsh, whereas yeah, sometimes you need like the guy to actually win the ball first. It's so stupid. It's the most basic analysis you're ever going to get. But if you can't win the ball at the coalface, I'm not sure that you can be saying that you are 100% the best player in the comp. Obviously, these guys do have their own ways of winning it, but the brute strength of a guy like Paddy Cripps and I'd say Bont and Petrarca as well, they're so well-rounded with what they bring to a game of football. Whereas I guess those guys like Rosie, Walsh, Goulden, obviously we have this conversation in 5 years' time. We're probably going to say it's those because they've developed those other elements even more. But yeah, right now it's Bont, Petrarca, and Cripper in my conversation. And I mean, the biased part of me says that it probably has to be Cripper. He's the one that's won the Brownlow medal, the one that's been able to do it in such a poor team with no supporting cast. Whereas I think at least with a few of the others, they've had a few other midfielders to help them at times, where I'm not sure whether they would have been able to do it the way Cripps has been able to do it and have to change his game, because the discussion around Cripper was always he's too slow. And at some stage he's playing too physical. He's going to break down. All of a sudden, he learns to kick in front of goals. He finds other elements of his game to go forward. And yeah, it's just been incredibly impressive and a big start this year as well.
I love this from Chunky. Also, probably the best comment ever. Well done. I love you, Chunky. But Zorko is a player as well that kind of myriads that sexiness, doesn't he? He can be classy. He can be a dirtbag. And that also goes against Unit because Toby Green, I would say, would also
Toby.
be in this conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Because on his day, I think Toby Green can be world class.
Absolutely.
But it does go against you, doesn't it, when you've got a reputation of being a little bit of a dickhead?
Yeah. No, it's just a tough position, I think, for Toby. If he was, it's tough on him because he probably could, but the role GWS, they don't necessarily need it. I think if he was playing a lot more midfield and you were able to see him play that role a bit more that we've seen in flashes, I would definitely have him in that kind of top 3. He's definitely top 10, but yeah, I don't tend to worry too much about the maybe not being the best bloke on field and those elements maybe as much as the next guy. It's like if you were able to win me games of footy and do the simple things there, I don't worry about you getting stuck into other people or maybe getting reported to that extent. But yeah, I mean, seeing some of the names that are coming through in the chat as well, like Dacos, like there's so many amazing players that haven't even scratched the surface of what they're going to be able to offer in a few years. And it's going to make this even more exciting because, you know, over the last 5 or so years, it's been all the players that I've watched growing up kind of starting to retire. And then the other gen that I've been able to really grow with starting to play now and be the best players. And now we're going to have this whole new flesh and group that coming through. I can't wait to see how the game evolves as well, because it seems as if you're going to have to be that Bont Cripper style player that can kick goals as well to be the best midfielder. You can't just be the ball winner that maybe 10 or so years ago, that's all you needed to do.
Mate, I agree with you. And I think some of the names that are coming through just make me think, because Cob Loaf, good friend of the channel, he's put Charlie Comden. Obviously, he's a North fan. But it's interesting that Jeremy Cameron gets mentioned, I think, a lot in this conversation.
Yes. I just literally wrote his name down, if you can see that, because I wanted to make the note that if we were doing this conversation like 2 years ago, I'd say, yes, he's number one for me.
Well, you see, what goes against me is if you stuck him in North Side, he ain't doing that. Like he ain't. There is no chance in hell he is doing that. Like, I would guarantee it. Like, I can't prove it, but if you stuck him in North Side now, he's Hipwood 4 years ago.
Oh, I think that's stiff to say on him. It's tough being that forward. I guess player where obviously you said it earlier, the distribution and the ball movement is really going to do a lot. But I think maybe not Cameron in 2024, probably 2022 and before that. He's that kind of player that he pushes so high up the ground and he's able to get involved. I don't think it matters where you play him. He's not going to be one out in the goal square. His work rate, ability to find the footy. Like I remember last year, I think it was when we just got over the line against Geelong and he kicks about 5 goals and has a ridiculous amount of touches everywhere. I think he could do it no matter where he is playing, just because he's so smart and he's got that engine as a forward that can move. Maybe someone that's a little bit more goal square-esque forward, then they're probably not going to be able to do it. But I reckon Jezza could do it wherever. I mean, he was able to play well in a GWS team that wasn't amazing for a few of those years anyway. So I think he definitely could. But it's an interesting argument. And that's where probably the midfielder probably has to win the best player. They win the Brownlow every single year, and it kind of makes sense.
It does. Like Paul, spot on with Tim Kelly. Like he looked prime Judd at Geelong. And you know what I mean? He looked like Gary Ablett Jr. at Geelong, and now he's Nathan Ablett. But yeah, you know what is a good point as well? Someone raised and brought him up, and I think he doesn't get enough love. Lachie Neale is one, like where I think he suffers, and I think this goes against you. If you go from a shit club, no offense to Freo, to a flag contender, I think that goes against you. Because in soccer, we see it as well. When players go from mid-sides to world-class sides, kind of goes against them. Because people then go, oh, well, this guy was there all the time, or this guy's worked his way there. Do you think that affects Lachie Neale? Because I think, like, to me, Lachie Neale would be, if he was on an open market, 3 first-rounders bare minimum.
He's an absolute champion of the game, clearly, and he's got the medals to show for it. It's interesting. I think there's a degree of it, clearly, when you do move clubs like that people will start to look at things differently. But I don't know. Weirdly, I reckon everyone's forgotten that he's even played for Freo because he's been around at Brisbane for so long and carried their midfield. I mean, carried their midfield. They've got a great midfield, but he's clearly so good that he lifts them up regardless. I'd just say something that hurts him because we're just such a Victorian biased entity as an AFL. I just reckon playing interstate cost you. If he was playing for Collingwood, Carlton, Essendon, Richmond, one of the bigger high profile teams, that he'd be spoken about every single day because he's just such a star. I just think that he's probably a year or two, not past it. That's hard to say, but there's other guys I now have above him just because of where he's at in his football. And maybe I want more goals from a player if I was to say who is the 100% best player in the league right now, or the highest, score involvement player, which, at the moment it's Heaney, but you got your Petrarca in number 2 behind him. And those are probably the kind of players that I gravitate towards if we're talking about peak of their powers still right now. And then also what they were able to do in the past. Because, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I still don't think he should have won the Brown, though, last year.
There is a common thing me and Let Dog talk about. If you were robbed the year before, the year after, it somehow comes back to you. And
always.
Me and Let Dog have a theory, because me and Let Dog, based on that theory, think Nick Dacos wins it this year.
100%. And how many times do you find a player, it's like their first breakout year, they get 0 votes, and then they played an average year the year after, and all of a sudden they're in the top 5, and you're going like, what are you talking about? Did the umpires just not know who this player was? Is that the problem?
Mate, it could be. But, I mean, yeah, I think this is a great discussion, and I'm a big fan of it. But we're talking about this, and it leads us on to Chunky's point. Obviously, we saw Neil. He went to Lions. I mean, it's always scary, this. And I'm glad Carlton are good, because everyone always compared us to Brisbane. And then they suddenly jettisoned to being an incredible side. And we kind of... Well, we had Teague. Let's just end the conversation there. But then when you look at rebuilds, I'm looking at North now, and I look at Hawthorn, and I've been quite open about this. I know Ken, my mate's in the chat. He's a massive Hawthorn boy. I think Hawthorn have done the rebuild the right way. I know results haven't been spectacular, but they've killed the senior players. They've gone hard at the draft. They've ripped the Band-Aid off. Where when I look at North, I still feel like they've clung on to a lot of players where they could have already committed. And you can see North are doing the media way. Bring mid-age players in, second chance players to fill you up. Where I'm a firm believer, the way to do it is attack the draft hard, try and accrue a star to build the team around, and then just let it happen. Let it happen.
Yeah.
What is the right way to rebuild? Because we've seen so many teams do it, but it never, ever happens, does it? Everyone does it different ways.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things. And I'd say putting my Carlton hat back on, which will probably stay on for the whole episode, to be honest. We obviously didn't do it the right way. I think on paper it sounds great. Gut the list, bring in all the highest rated kids in the draft over a few years, and all of a sudden you're going to have in 5 or so years' time the best list ever, kind of like an expansion team that's able just to stockpile the best talent. The issue is it just doesn't happen that way. It doesn't pan out. There's so many more little variables that need to be mentioned. The draft is such a big part of it, but I think it's about where you do build. And my criticism of North really has just been the type of players that they've brought in. It's all midfielders. They do not have key position players. Larky, obviously, absolute gun. But apart from that, I know they just obviously lost Ben Mackay, but that's what we did, at least at the draft. The thing that I think is pivotal to Carlton's success at the moment is weedering down back, to a degree, Tom De Koning as a ruckman, but then being able to get those 2 key forwards. Whereas they've had opportunities, North Melbourne. They had the chance to get Logan McDonald, didn't go for it. I think last year they did have a chance to bring in a guy like a Daniel Curtin, something else other than just stockpiling these midfielders, which maybe it's controversial, but I just think that you can always find mids. There's a plethora of them. I think North already had a decent midfield anyway. They clearly needed the hardest position to find, which is key position talent. And I think the other elements are always about the veterans. You do need to keep a few of them around, but there is that degree of you're going to need to cash in on a few and capitalize on the value, because you got to make those tough decisions. Who's not going to be here in 3 years' time that we maybe don't need, that we can cover the loss of, and be able to generate straight through the draft? And another big point, if you want to kind of talk about North as well, I just think they've got the coaching wrong. Maybe it's what they need potentially by having that sort of strong head, experienced guy, and then in 2 or so years, they get rid of him and bring in the next gun coach, and that's the stability they were needing. It's hard to tell right now, but I like the idea of what Hawthorn were doing by getting Sam Mitchell. We're going to get in the best young prospect, the best mind to develop these youngsters and go that way. That's how I would like to do it. I don't like having to bring in the old head to try and guide the way. Don't worry about how it's worked previously. Try and figure out the new way to do it.
Mate, I agree. I mean, I look at Hawthorn and I think they did it the right way. Like, I know people say they got rid of loads of senior players, but I look at how they rebuilt. And even if you look at their 23 that played this week, they've still got experience in the key hot zones. And then they're surrounded by youth, but they've still got, like, Blade Hardwick. He's been around forever. I think people forget he's 27 years old. Do you know what I mean? But he's played a lot of games. They've got Sicily down the back. Do you know what I mean? Jai Newcomb, he might be a baby, but the guy oozes leadership. And I always think it's interesting when you hear Sam talk about Gunston. He didn't want to get rid of him. You look last year, I thought that's what they needed. They lacked that Gunston because he does help the young lads get along. Then when I look at North, though, the players they kept, they're just like really random. And I know people look at Carlton, and I agree with the comment here that there's 2 rebuilds, the Silvani one and the Austin one. I know everyone goes on about the 2015 draft, right? But I always say this, the 2015 draft, if you went back and watched that draft as a draft, they kind of fell into place in the order of Carlton's picks. So it was Whittaker or Shaki. I know the media was split. You go back that year, Shaki was like 50-50. And thank God we didn't go Shaki. But according to the media, but Whittaker, if you were doing that, was odds on when you know you've got the second round pick around the key forwards. Charlie Curnow was a top 5 pick if he didn't do what he did the week before. Right? Do you know what I mean? Like, he was better than Harry Mackay, and I still stand by that. So Carlton kind of everything fell also into place, didn't it? And then when you look back at that, that's probably, I think, where Carlton went wrong, nailing them picks in the 30s over a continual period. Because, like, you look at that thing, Marchbank, he could be great, but I always say this about Marchbank. In reality, he should be 100 gamer, 150, 200 gamer. The guy has played a handful of games, so talent's great, but if you've never played football enough, what's the point of talent? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather have Sam Frost than Marchbank at that time because Sam Frost has played games. He might not be good, but at least he's fit.
And there's also there's obviously a lot of luck to everything, but I think something that does play a big role is the years that you tend to finish really low and you almost stockpile your draft picks. What if the draft is just really average that year and all of a sudden it doesn't work? Like, I always think back to, I think it might have been the 2020 draft when North didn't go to get Logan McDonald, got in Phillips and Powell, and how much talent is around those kind of top 10, 15 picks that they kind of went in with thinking that this could be the draft, that we've got 2 high-end picks. All of a sudden, those guys are going to develop and be the key pillars that we need going forward. If the draft just isn't that deep and doesn't have that high-end talent, then it can be difficult for you because all of a sudden you maybe don't have as many picks. You only have the one the year after, and it's not going to work. And there's just so many factors, I think, that play into it at all. Like, if North are able to keep a Ben Mackay, that's obviously going to help their defense out. If they're able to have a few more fit players down there, Griffin Logue stays healthy, and maybe we're having slightly different conversations about it. I do find the conversation around North kind of funny because 2 weeks ago it was all West Coast, worst team that's ever played. They're not going to win any games of football. Their rebuild's a disaster. The club, what are they going to do? They've won 2 games on the bounce, and all of a sudden it's North Melbourne. West Coast are fine, even though we were having the exact same conversations before. I'm not saying it's all about to turn immediately for North Melbourne, but I think sometimes we do go quite overreactionary with how we perceive lists and things just on a week-to-week basis. But there are clear gaps with North Melbourne right now. There's a lot of good talent in there, a lot of good young talent, but it's just what's else is around there when you kind of compare it to Hawthorn and who they've been able to bring in. Carl Amon just to take a bit of pressure off. They weren't able to get those key forwards in. They threw a lot of money at a few. Then they bring in a guy like a Mabi or Chol, who's a decent role player. He's a decent average AFL footballer that can be on your list for a couple of years. Brought back Gunston as well to help that position. Those are those kind of moves that you kind of have to make that I just don't think North Melbourne have maybe been shrewd enough in getting. Like a Zach Fisher's one of those moves where it's a guy in those sort of middle ages, the 25, 26, that can be there for a few years. They probably just haven't done enough of that to help them, which is what I think, again, that Carlton had on. It's what hurt us, not being able to get in competent, aged players that can allow you not to have to play all those 18-year-olds and stifle their development.
I agree. I mean, I always think this. I think the media have been very lazy because, Harley Reid, obviously, freak of nature. And it's about as surprising that Harley Reid is good as it is the sky will be blue when it's sunny. Do you know what I mean? It's not a surprise. But I will say this, North Melbourne's list is a hell of a lot more healthy because you look at their players, West Coast, there isn't a lot of collateral there with their older players. And they haven't got great pick selections. Like I look at North selections next year, they have a host of second and thirds. Do you know what I mean? Which is the building blocks of the list. And they're probably going to be able to snag a couple of key defenders out of there as well. So, you add a key defender to that list. Let's say like a Tom Barras type or something. North are miles ahead of West Coast. It's just at the moment. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with them. Like I always said this about Carlton in the 2018. It was still a better list than in long term. Just it was that time, it was bad, but there was still a lot of talent on the list. And I think their midfield, North's midfield in 5 years' time is going to be formidable. They've got some of the best midfielders and most consistent midfielders running around there. Yeah,
I think that's where my criticism of their list just comes from, North, where they've got so many, almost too many, to the point where like a Sheasel that has been spoken about a lot, I think should be playing a mid-forward role rather than just wasting him, not really impacting down half back. I don't think that's helping them right now, but they've got so many midfielders, they probably should have either looked to move one of those on and get some picks and maybe try and find a key position player or just draft one instead. And yeah, West Coast, they're probably going to implode if they don't rejuvenate quickly because, they're kind of getting propped up by having all those healthy 30-plus-year-olds that are all premiership players. But maybe if they're able to hold on to a few of those over the next couple of years and still rejuvenate through, that could be the thing that helps them. Because you look at North at the moment, who are the players teaching them? That's the thing I always looked at Carlton. How many years have we spoken about? Where are the leaders? Who are they learning from? And I'm looking at North Melbourne right now and trying to see how these young players are going to develop into absolute superstars. And I don't know who they are. Where is the wealth of knowledge right now?
Well, you've got a problem, haven't you, when Hugh Greenwood's your second most oldest and senior player?
Yeah, good, but he's not. He shouldn't be that guy that you look to. Not to be too disrespectful to him, because I do like him, but he's not that been there, done it kind of guy. So I don't know, maybe that's where you need to look at, like a Brisbane did that's been spoken about a lot, that they did well, bringing in a Hodge, bringing in a Birchall, someone to help shift that list up a little bit and to learn off. I think that those, the high profile veterans are really, really important. That Bevtone's talking about in the comments.
Bevtone's spot on as well with the big club. I mean, the thing West Coast have got going for them is probably what Carlton have got and Brisbane have got during their profile. The name's big. Like, if you're a 32-year-old and you want to earn $1 million for 2 years to come and be an educator, you'd probably rather go to West Coast than North. Like, no offense to North, but you
absolutely.
You're taking Perth.
And a lot of people probably don't understand how big West Coast are. They're the whole state over there. It's ridiculous, mate. The news, the whole news is just West Coast. They don't even talk about the news stories that's happening outside of sport. It's just, if anything happened, it's West Coast. You're on the TV. I'm sure right at the moment, it's just going to be Harley Reid highlights in between a snippet of something going on somewhere, some fire that's going on. But Harley Reid kicked 3 on the weekend, so don't worry about it.
Mate, some footballer. One thing on this topic before we finish. Do we think as well the AFL sent the wrong message this year just gone with North Melbourne getting a plethora of help? But which actually affected Hawthorn, who, by the textbook, have done the rebuild the right way. They've traded assets. They've accumulated draft picks. Then to see North Melbourne get the handouts that Hawthorn weren't privy to, and the excuse being Hawthorn had a dynasty, North Melbourne didn't. Do we feel like that sends the wrong message? Because if I said it last year, if I was Hawthorn, I'd be mighty pissed seeing our rivals are getting help and we've traded out of our stars.
Yeah, I think I agree that I don't mind that there's some assistant packages going around. I think it's always a good thing to help keep things even, particularly if you've got it's rude to say, but like the smaller clubs that probably don't have that pull of a bigger club that has a lot more members that have all the flashy things. It's hard to get and convince people to go to North Melbourne. How many years do they continually throw big cash at some of the biggest free agents, and they just go, no, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't matter how much you pay me. I want to play for a bigger club, or whatever that appeal kind of is. The issue for me is more around how the assistance is happening. And I could talk for hours on the compensation that goes on free agency and all of that. And I think that plays almost a bigger role in disadvantaging teams. I just don't think that it's fair that we just say this arbitrary thing of wherever your pick is in the draft, you just get a pick after that, regardless of who the player is. It's just kind of like a money trigger happens and you get it, whereas that doesn't equate necessarily to that player's value. And then I think probably the thing that goes to your point on this and the disadvantage of potentially other clubs is there isn't a consistent pattern to this. There seems to be no textbook. You lose this amount of games or you have this amount of financials. It triggers this kind of compensation and this kind of assistance. They just kind of make it up as they go. And then all of a sudden, another team like Hawthorn maybe need a few draft picks and then it doesn't happen for you because North have got them all. It's not good. And it hurts. It hurts clubs that are trying to rebuild when the first round of a draft blows out to 30 odd picks. Like all of a sudden you just tried to stockpile second rounders and it doesn't happen for you. There's so many bad things in it, but I don't know, maybe eventually we will get it right. Like I don't mind some of these attempting we might give you a pick, but you have to trade it. I think that's a better mechanism because it allows a team to still get that pick that probably needs it more than North, but maybe North are able to get a player. But yeah, there just really needs to be better consistency and transparency around why are we giving certain compensation to who and why other teams aren't getting it. Because it's annoying when we weren't good and all of a sudden we were getting access to a state league player and that's it. Like I don't need, like I'm getting Mickey Gibbons. I'm not getting a first round draft pick. Bit stiff.
I'm with you. I'm a firm believer that all assistant packages should be tradable, like forced trade. And I said it last year with Harley Reid hype. I was like, this is where if you want to help North, give them pick 6 after the shit clubs and say purely tradable, right? Yeah. Because then if they want to trade up to pick 1 and bank the Harley Reid, you've probably got the Arsenal. 2 and 6 probably gets it done. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe one of the other clubs, Melbourne, want to come in for him, and 6 will help them get it. It allows you to acquire talent. I'm with you. I mean, I was listening to Lloydie saying it was unfair. West Coast got Harley Reid and North Melbourne would be kicking themselves. But like he was saying, it was an awkward position. But I'm like, that's part of list management. Having pick 1, if you're West Coast, yes, you can have a world-class talent, or do you cash in and get 4 youngsters to help you rebuild?
Yeah.
Like, we need that decision, because I'll stand by it. I think West Coast should have traded that pick. I think
agree.
the hype of him could have probably got them 3 or 4 top 10 picks if they wanted and secured their future. But we want them decisions making it harder to keep 1.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, obviously it's one of those things. Harley Reid's playing good footy. We all kind of expected it. The issue with West Coast is their list almost needed an injection of 3 guys rather than 1 right now. And it's working for them at the moment. Will it work in 5-10 years' time? Then we can definitely decide. But I'd like the AFL to get a bit more creative with some of the assistance packages. Why not look at maybe a team like North Melbourne right now? Let's say we're trying to fix them and help them. Why not force them to have to hit the salary cap? Why? This is my big gripe in AFL in general. If you've got a list of shit kickers, why do you have to pay them the salary cap? Why do we have to have like a minimum that we're having to pay all these players? Like, I just think that that's silly, because then you're having to overpay for players that aren't worth it. That in 3 or 4 years stifles you a little bit, because now all of a sudden you're up, your cap's all the way at the top because you've had to pay old mate who shouldn't be getting that money, and you can't get the next guy in. So it just, I don't know, maybe those are the little things the AFL can look at in the coming years by saying, okay, you don't actually have to spend the max cap right now. We'll drop it down a little bit for you so you can use that money to attract and maybe overpay 1 player because you've been able to not pay the rest. Those are the kind of the mechanisms I like to attract talent, rather than just handing out draft picks that could be a lottery anyway.
You know what, you say this, there is a famous Carlton player, I won't name him, but he played under 20 games for us in the last 5 years, who told me he was on 350k at Carlton when he was there. And I remember being pissed, going, fuck off, what a load of shit. And then he literally pulled out his banking app and showed me the last pay slip from the Blues. And I did the maths and I was like, that is 350k.
Mate, it could be the bloke, but I swear, well, that's the thing. That's why it could have been the guy. I don't want to, speculate, but it was like, I remember there was word that like, I think it was Matthew Lobe was like, we brought him in literally because he was on more money than he was probably worth already. And it was like, we've got to hit the salary cap. We have to hit it. So we're bringing in guys like that. It's just, I don't think that helps these developing teams that, it's not like the NBA where you only need like 5 players. So if you get the number 1 pick in the draft, that's 1 of 5. This is 1 of 30 that you need on your list. So it's harder to rebuild just from the draft. And when you can't attract players, we need to find different avenues. Because, as you say,
the way
don't want to overpay.
I would say if you have a minimum spend, I would say if you're under the minimum spend, that opens up a compensation scheme. So then it encourages clubs to bring in talented youngsters, state league footballers that aren't demanding high value. And that, to me, is the right method. If you've got money to burn, let them spend it. Or, like Gav's saying, give them more money to bring coaches in, better development.
Yeah, the soft cap needs to change regardless. It's so bad at the moment. And I wonder how many people that probably should be going into assistant coaching and development coaching aren't, because they're just not getting paid the right money for the amount of hours they put in. It's interesting. Do you even, maybe this is something else I'm just throwing out there, but like, do we need to not even have a roster size? Because as long as you're staying under the salary cap, if you're splitting that salary cap over more players because you want to throw more gambles at a few state league players that maybe are getting overlooked because you just can't take the risk on them, does it allow a team like North to say, okay, we're going to take a punt on 3 guys at a lower wage that before we were probably only going to have to take 1 player from the draft from a private school because we had to tick all those boxes because we couldn't take that risk. All of a sudden, one or 2 of them might pay off. I just think there's so many more mechanisms that you can go through rather than making it bad for everyone else.
Mate, I'm a firm believer that we should have less 25s being given a second chance and more 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. Like, I think I feel sorry for some of the young draftees that go into VFL football, like Pom Cotter, Chin Cotter, had a horrific injury, and then suddenly he's playing country football and had to work his way back because they are, speaking to a lot of draftees, there's a couple of them I've spoken to, they are literally cast away. Like, once they ain't drafted, they are actually lower than a decent state level footballer. Like, it's a real degrading place to be.
No, it's a weird one. And maybe we get to a stage eventually where, like, we're able to keep free agency open for longer in the year. So if you do get injuries, maybe it's a mechanism where you can top up your list up to a certain date, but it has to be guys that are already signed to your VFL team. So there you get more of those chances from those players where if you're decimated, like maybe Carlton is right now, we've got a ridiculous injury list. You can throw in a guy that's already signed to your VFL list and they get 5 or so games and maybe they don't get a chance by the end of the season. Maybe they don't, or maybe they've shown enough where another team takes a punt. I don't know. I feel like there's so many different avenues that are exciting to go down that just gives more opportunity to more players. But maybe we'll see that when a Tassie comes in and list sizes are a lot bigger, that people are going to have to get creative.
Mate, spot on. And great comment by Gav. There was a draftee I was speaking to a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no money in VFL.
And he has had a nightmare because where he lives, the only job was the abattoir. Centrelink wouldn't help him out. All the clubs that would pay him a decent wage wanted a commitment 4 nights a week. He couldn't if he got a job. And like, he's literally given up football. And it is really sad that obviously they've got a life. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've got to live and football's suddenly a pipe dream. But an injury at the wrong time, now he's full-time in the abattoir. And it's heartbreaking that there isn't a pathway for him to exercise his dream.
No, there's not. It's really tough because, you can maybe survive 1 year in a VFL system or Sandful, Waffle, and then you just got to go play country footy because that's suburban footy because that's where the money is. That's where you're getting it all. So it's very tough. I'm sure there's a lot of ways the AFL can try and pump money more into that area because, we don't want to lose potential stars of this game simply because they weren't good when they were 18 and they just can't afford to play footy anymore.
Mate, it's sad, but we come to the first fun segment. Bench starter trade. Chat, you enjoy this segment. Usually the simulator, the randomizer, likes to take the P155, but there is the list of names on your screen, chat. And we will present him 3 random names that you will bench, trade, or play. We've got the top 110 footballers in the league as voted for by the AFL rating system. And we start with Nick Vlastin.
There we go.
Nick Vlastin. Tell you what, a name that you forget, but very good footballer. Oh, look at this. Dan Houston.
Oof. Gee, a lot of defenders. We love this.
We like it when
give
it
him
has
some
a
love.
theme. Oh, Harris Andrews.
Oh,
so
okay.
Nick Vlastin, Harris Andrews, and Mr. Dan Houston.
Gee, that's tough. This is tough. I think, unfortunately, this is interesting. If I'm in a football club right now, like the easy trade there is just Vlastin because he's not as good as the others. But am I getting the value there? Maybe that's something I need to be looking at with these 3. Maybe I need to be moving to Dan Houston because I could potentially get a little bit more from him. And I think that, halfbacks, you can kind of get one elsewhere. So I think if I'm North Melbourne right now, I'm trading Dan Houston on the money and then what the value I reckon I could get back, even though I do rate him higher. I'm benching Vlastin and I'm playing and starting Andrews because I think he's the best out of the three. And key defenders, they don't grow on trees. He's top 3 or 4 in the competition. So yeah, controversial, but I'm going the value option of what I can get back for Houston because I'll get a halfback anywhere. Don't worry about it.
Mate, you know what? I like that because often people just trade the worst of the 3, but you could probably bring someone in, like you say, better than Houston in the long run.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like my wheeling and dealing if I'm a list manager. So yeah, give me some picks for Dan Houston, although I do love him.
I mean, you could just do a North and get a Jet mid forward and play him halfback for 40 touches.
Why not, mate? Oh, it's Dacos. Dacos did it, so let's just do it with Sheasel, even though he's a gun forward.
Mate, you're spot on. And then we've got this is a big game, this, right? So yeah. I haven't opened it yet, but let's open the countdown timer. Let's make sure we set this to 2 minutes.
This is where you're gonna get me because I can talk a big game, but under the pressure of this is where I will shit the bed and forget every AFL player that has ever played the game, and I won't be able to get it done. But you know, I'm here, so let's try and beat a record. I'll talk myself down, but I can't embarrass myself too much, surely.
Okay, well, I mean, I've officially opened the package, and I can tell you, Mrs. Pom hasn't been a dickhead till about pick 7 in this. All right.
Okay, here we go.
I'm fairly confident we can get 5. I mean, this is all on my guesswork, though. This is all on my ability to talk to you. So, right, I am ready when you are. Chat, you can help him out.
Please.
Right, let's go. Okay, his first name sounds a little bit like what I'm doing now. When you're trying to scratch something, you're scratching the
itch.
Yeah.
Oh, itch.
And his surname is famous English soccer player Michael
Mitch. Sorry, who was Mitch?
You take the piss when someone's won 0 games. A famous actor comes up, something Wilson.
Mitch. Oh, Mitchito Owens.
Yes, bang!
Nice.
Oh,
beautiful.
Look at this. He's on fire.
I got one.
Okay. Carlton's second best key forward.
Harry Mackay.
Yeah. A surname of this player is an old person's drink. It's an Irish cream liquor.
Oh, Zach Bailey?
Yes, 3.
Here you go.
If former Essendon player now plays for Brisbane, looks like a greyhound.
Oh, Joe Danaher.
Yeah, okay, 4. 5. First name shares the same name as Plowman.
As in first name, Lockie?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Lockie, yeah, fantastic.
Schultz?
Surname, probably his granddad was a German.
Oh, Lockie.
Plays for Collingwood.
No. Oh, my God.
Sounds like something a German Nazi officer would tell you to
Schultz?
stop.
Lockie
Yes,
Schultz?
man. Yeah. 1-5. 6. Real religious surname. I think he was Cain and Abel's son. Fucking hell, how do you say that? The skirt surname is a skirt you wear when you're in Bali.
Kilt? Oh, Sarong. Caleb Sarong.
Yes! Okay, this is the hard one. We've got 10 seconds. This is a real posh shop. His surname, beginning with M. It's like really expensive. It's like Kmart, but for posh people.
Oh, no idea. You lost me there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The new clubhouse leader.
Oh, huge. Who was the last one, Pommy?
Huge. Huge. Oh, dear. Hey, Maz, where were you?
Oh, yes, grind. That's good from you, Pommy. I love that. Oh.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, how do you say Brian?
How do you get a clue for that?
I was like, oh, that is hard. Well, hey,
Harry Mackay got me through that one. Absolutely.
He did. Ian played himself down. Hey,
it's the old trick where you go to the pub and you're no good at pool, and then all of a sudden you play for money and you just wipe the floor with them, mate.
Hey, that should be the advert for Myers. Kmart for posh people.
That's the one.
Like, honestly, what a joke. Well, we now come to everyone's favorite segment, right? And this week we gave you, I reckon Ian has the toughest assignment here because I think hobbies are harder than food. So he will pick 2 back and 3 mids, a ruck and 2 forwards, and it's based on hobbies.
And this is the thing, Pommy. I am pretty dull and boring. I don't have a lot of hobbies. So I've had to really delve deep and do a lot of research in this one. But I reckon my reasoning should hopefully get me through because I'm going to start in the defenders and we're going to go forward from there. And I'm going to start with, he's not going to be the key defender, but he's kind of that second piece. And in saying so, I'm going puzzles as the hobby because to be good at puzzles, mate, you got to be a deep thinker. You got to be knowledgeable. You got to have patience. A real reader of the game from the back line. I'm seeing he can lock down or defend. I reckon, if you can solve a jigsaw, solve a puzzle, he's going to be reading the play perfectly from the back. It's going to be in slow motion. So puzzles is my first cab off the rank.
Mate, I rate a puzzle. Nice old person's activity. I like it.
You said old person. This could be the most rogue one for key defender because I was trying to think of strength. And maybe I was thinking gym, but I was thinking too much of a hothead if we're going gym as a hobby in my defense. So I'm going to go crochet/knitting as a hobby. This is not one I frequent myself. I do have to just say that to start here. But, when looking at the best key defender in the land, I just don't reckon you can go past knitting because it's another craft that's going to take patience to master, that's got the hand-eye coordination, the vision to excel. Mate, one mistake unravels the whole team and nothing holds the team and the backline together more than a strong and well-crafted stitch.
Great explanation and probably the first time I've heard crochet mentioned on a football show. That's quality.
Won't be the last, mate. Won't be the last with me on here.
All right, hit me with some mids.
Yeah, so we'll go the ruckman, and this was the hardest one. There were a few players that had some other positions that almost made their way in the ruck, but this was probably the last one selected. And again, I think my reasoning is going to pull me over the line with all of these. I am going baking/cooking as the hobby to be the ruckman, and it's one of those ones. It's just not a glamorous bit of work, but people love the end product, Pommy. And much like rucking, anyone can do it. Any big lad can go in the ruck, but only those that take the time to really learn the craft excel here. And the big reason I liked the baking as the ruckman was it's a real distributor of goods around them. You've made the muffins. All of a sudden, you're passing them down everyone's throat, much like a ruckman. So I reckon the humble baker kind of works well as a ruckman.
That epic, elite. I like it.
I'm glad you enjoy it. Midfielders, we'll start with probably the main part of this midfield. We'll go that the Paddy Cripps style midfielder here is the inside bull, and we're going for home improvement. The odd jobs around the house. This is gardening. It could just be getting the hands dirty because this is your tenacious, your tough inside bull. Still creative because you can build things, much like the shelf behind me. You can do little things like that, but it's really at the coal face. And so for me, that is the real DIY in the middle, getting it done. What do you make of that being the key pillar of the midfield?
Hey, mate, my wife has a list a mile long of me things to do. So if I can now approach them as I am the Patrick Cripps of the house, that makes my life get them done. Better.
Yeah. So to pair that up, I need sort of a hard running midfielder. I need the engine, and this is where I'm going for hiking/nature walks because it's all about the fitness. And it's the miles into the legs, the run through the midfield, as I said. And one of those things when you are out in nature, it's really that positive mental effects that you get from it. And while you're out there in getting in touch with nature, getting in touch with the grass, mate, where's footy played? And the person that's out there the most is going to be great with knowing the turf itself. So I think that pairs up quite nicely. And then the last thing to round out the midfield, I've gone the runner. I've gone the inside bull. Need a bit more creativity, and this is where I go for for probably one of these hobbies that I actually do myself in the music side of things, whether you're playing an instrument, singing, make your own music, whatever you want, because this is the creativity inside that midfield, the more flashy one. And not only that, but mate, music, you're setting the tempo of the team, setting the mood as well. Any genre, if you need a bit of an uplifting song, the music is going to be there to do it. So yeah, a bit of everything in that midfield as far as hobbies are concerned.
I didn't think anyone would beat Dog with the explanations, but you have pushed him here.
I'm trying my hardest.
He's on the ropes, Dog, if he's watching this. Absolutely on the ropes. I love it, mate. Let's see what he's got for my forwards.
Well, hopefully we can sort this out, because this one was almost my ruckman. It's my key forward. We're going golf. It's the best bloody hobby out there. And, golf, you're talking about skill. You're talking about accuracy that you need in front of goal, the precision. And really, when I was looking for my key forward, let's be serious. This is the one that people pay to see it. And golf is clearly the best hobby you can get. People, they're not paying to go on home improvement trips, puzzle holidays. That doesn't happen, but we're paying to go on a golf trip, Pommy. And much like Charlie Curnow as a key forward, he's putting the butts in seats. People are spending money on it to get that experience. And that's what they do with golf as a hobby.
Mate, and you've got to smash a few beers after a job well done. So
exactly. And I guess much like Paul Hill has said, mate, most frustrating hobby. If you're not good at it, you can end up like Harry Mackay last year when things aren't going well. You can throw a few clubs, but gee, when you get it right, it is just the most magical thing on earth. And the last one, we're going for a bit more of that mid-size forward pocket to help with getting things done, to pair them up with golf. We're going one of your favorites again. We're going darts here. Again, you need the accuracy. Yeah. But darts has just got the flair. It's got that bit of fun of the team. And I'm picturing a Tom Papley. I'm picturing a Toby Green when I'm seeing darts there. They can get down to business when you need them to, but really it's a bit of a laugh and a bit of fun. And that's what you need in that forward line. A bit more flair and creativity for sure.
I've got to say, for those who have never been to the darts.
Oh, it's the best.
By a mile, the best spectator sport of all time. Nothing comes close to darts.
You get a group, you dress up in an according costume. It's the weirdest thing ever. A bunch of grown men all dressed up in costumes that they've spent way too much time planning. But gee, once you're there, it is just the most wild. It's got all the best parts of soccer with the chanting, but you're doing it over darts, which just makes it funnier. It's such a great vibe.
Exactly. It's basically like a stag do.
Yeah.
Right. Honestly, Bevton, the way I describe it, I've been to Ali Pali twice, and both times I've got absolutely obliterated and had. I don't think I've ever had so much fun with middle-aged fat males in my life. Yeah. Honestly, best day of my life.
I think there's something also in it where no one really cares who wins at all. You're kind of there for darts and you're cheering because you want a 9 darter if you're lucky. You want 180. You want just darts itself to win. So when you've got a whole group of people that are basically just all there cheering on the same thing, I think that adds an element because you kind of can't be disappointed. Your team can't lose because darts at the end of the day wins. And I feel like that's probably why it also gets so wild because you can't be unhappy. You can't lose.
I've got to say, it's only Australia. I did go to this event where they smashed up the thing. Probably one of my favourite moments I've witnessed as well, because I couldn't believe people were fighting over a drink being spilled.
Boring tables.
But in the UK, it doesn't. There's very little fights at the darts. It's more of a. It's more of a love fest, to be honest. It's more of a love fest. But Ian, that is a great team. I can't wait to make that look sexy and release the graphic tomorrow because that will look good. But we finish with the Pombardi Trophy. We've got only one more week. And as you can see, chat, Harry Mackay got the bonus votes for winning Player of the Month in March. He's closely followed by Matty Rowell, Isaac Heaney, Jeremy Cameron, Caleb Sarong, and Tom Stewart make up the the top 6. But we'll start with Ian's 1 vote.
Yeah, look, this was probably one of the tougher things this week. There was a lot of really good performances, and my 1 vote basically could have gone between 3 players from the same game. I'm looking at Adelaide v Essendon. Merritt's very stiff. Dawson's very stiff, but I just thought Jake Saligo was absolutely unbelievable. He was just single-handedly making Adelaide look good against the Bombers. He just found the ball everywhere, had it on a string, bought his own footy, 31 touches, got a goal. Exciting player, Jake Saligo. So I think he deserves a vote for me.
Mate, Jake Saligo, I love it. I went with my 1 vote. My votes have just jumped off the screen. I went with Jordan Dawson, same game.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan. I maybe was just upset because of Jake Saligo's game versus us. So it might have, but I mean, I think Jordan Dawson, one of the most underrated players in the comp. Yes. I feel like what you said about Lachie Neale, if he played for a Victorian club, everyone would be saying he'd be the best player in the league.
Yeah, no, his quick goals in succession really set the game alight there. He was tremendous. And again, it was literally between those 2 that I had to finally pick between. So I like those votes, Pommy. My 2 goes to a man that I think was robbed out of a medal this week. It's Harley Reid. Like, I know Elliot Yeo was very, very good and probably more consistent throughout, but I don't know, people pay to see big goals and to have 19 disposals and kick 3. Harley Reid was absolutely electric. I felt like he really was the energy of that game and doing it for West Coast. A few stiff, probably not to get votes there, but I've got to give it to Harley.
Mate, I love it. I love it. I went Bailey Dale from the Doggies. I thought, you know what? This time last week, he was dropped. Bevo had lost his mind and then comes in and puts the rest of the players to shame. What a way to... I always like a man who makes their boss look stupid. So I had to give him 2 votes.
Yeah, look, very stiff. That was basically like the only game I think this week I didn't actually watch. And looking at the stats, I was like, I think Bailey Dale probably should get one, but I didn't see it, so I can't put him in there. So very stiff. My 3 will go to a big ruckman. And there was a few that had a good week this week, but I've got to give it to Brodie Grundy because I don't think it's often that you see a ruckman not only get 24 disposals, but 11 tackles, 6 clearances. He was absolutely beasting for Sydney. If he's not there, they probably still win the game anyway, but they're not doing it as emphatically as possible. And just because ruckmen don't get enough love, I reckon a performance like that, if you're getting tackles and doing the hard, as we talked about it, best plays in the competition, doing it at the coalface, they're getting votes for me.
Mate, I agree. I think Brodie's been sensational since going to Sydney as well, just quietly. I think no one is talking about it. I thought long and hard about this, but Harley Reid was my 3. Yeah. I think showdown, young kid, your team needs you. I thought a very mature performance. And Ian, 4 votes. We're getting tasty now.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was very tough. I had a list of like 20 players I wanted to give votes to. And this guy started a bit lower, but the more I thought about it, I just thought the degree of difficulty meant that he had to get 4. And that's Tyson Stengel. Thought he was best on ground in the Geelong-Brisbane game. And it's tough. Brisbane haven't been amazing this year, but to do it away from home, I think that's a tough thing. The midfield battle, it was wet. It was hard to get a lot of goals. For him to kick 2 and then have 5 score involvements. Thought he was the real creative player in the forward half when the key forwards weren't able to get it done. And for Geelong, really, I think they're probably the most informed team for me at the moment right now, just ahead of us. And so to do it at the Gabba, I think just the degree of difficulty means that he gets that little boost in votes.
Probably the best comment I've ever seen, Fred Blogs. Absolutely gold. I went with Sam Walsh for 4 votes. I thought form team in the competition versus Carlton, and I thought him and his mate pretty much won that game single-handedly. And I can't remember a time I've seen 2 midfielders turn the game like that. And I thought to do that against a midfield that going into the game, press said was the greatest of all time. I think just shows them how good Sam Walsh and Cripps were.
Oh, he's unbelievable. To be doing it 2 games in a row off the back of the back injury, it's just, he's not human. Not many players are able to get to that form immediately and change so much about a team. He's
got
probably
remember, Mitch Cleary said only 4 weeks ago he was Stephen Hawking.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I heard so many different things about he's about to have surgery. I'm hearing it from the barber, knows a surgeon, who knows a dad, who knows a cousin. I was hearing everything, to be honest. It was wild. So great to see him back in. Yeah, I felt like I couldn't give 2 Carlton players votes, particularly that high as well. And there were so many good performances. So I tried to spread out my votes, but you can't go past Cripper for 5. Like, I mean, come on. 39 of the finest, 13 clearances. 13, Pommy. That's just absolutely insane. He just, I just run out of words to say about Patrick Cripps and what he's able to do to set the tone when you need him to. He steps up. He's just an absolute superstar of the game. And yeah, give him the 5 from me.
Mate, I gave him 5 too. I thought I've been a sucker this year for players that are captains and performed. I'm a big advocate of performing, and they were excellent. So we will enter these into the 3. So that's 5. Brody Grundy is already on here, so he's 7. Look at that. Pom remembers. Sam Walsh, 4. 14.
This is on the fly maths, which we absolutely love because I can't do maths, even if you give me enough time. And so for Pom to be able to doing this under the pump is just spectacular. But yeah, like, I mean, there's so many players that could have got votes this week, and that was the toughest thing. So that's why, yeah, it really came down to me trying to split it, I think, between games. And then, yeah, that kind of degree of difficulty turned things around because like a John Newcomb could have maybe got some votes in there, those kind of players. But yeah, I don't know. Against North, I just can't do it.
Mate, though it was tough. Like Carl Amon, I agree. There were some good performances for Hawthorn. It was a tough week because there was some good performances. But that being said, Walsh sneaks after his 5 double 5 from Collingwood superfan Swoop Luke. He snuck up. Walsh has only played 2 games, chat, and he is
insane.
Hot on there. And remember, big shout out to my mate Mickey, who is actually making a replica of the Lombardi Trophy and sticking my name. So we will hopefully get this out to the end of the year winner. Remember the rules: 5 votes from each coach, 2 bonus votes for winning player of the month as well. Sam Walsh, he's hot. He's leading. He's probably won player of the month this week already because there's been such a sparse. But Ian, tell everyone, while I put your link in the description, what you're doing this week.
Yes, no, very busy this week. Slightly changing things up a little bit. So we're going to have a bit of a different structure to the way we do the Carlton content this week. So pretty much as soon as it is recorded and exported as a file, basically on the Navy Blue Corner YouTube channel and wherever you get streaming, at Navy Blue Corner is the place to get it. We're going to be doing a bit of a quick sort of match review, talking about the biggest talking points from the game that'll be out basically ASAP as soon as it's done. And then every Wednesday, including this Wednesday, as always, over on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. And again, wherever you stream it, in podcast form as well. Navy Blue Corner. Wednesday night, Blue Abroad on YouTube, 8 p.m. We do basically a preview show of the next game for Carlton, and then also all those hot topic issues that come up throughout the week. If there's an injury meltdown, we go through it all, trying to have a bit more of that voice of reason to the biggest key talking points every single week. So yeah, trying to do the 2 sort of episodes throughout a week, which is very exciting. Breaks it up and you don't have to sit through an hour 20. It's sort of split between 2 episodes instead.
Mate, we love it. Link is in the description, chat. Go and send Ian some love. You know where Blue Abroad is. You'll see Ian on the selection table as well. He's always there as well with the other boys.
Absolutely, mate. So much to go on. I can't wait.
mate, it should be a good week this week because, I mean, it's going to be tough to drop anyone after last week's win.
I'll find a way to wield the axe.
I don't think we've got anyone coming back either this week, have we?
No, I don't believe so. Just the boys in the twos that got a win and played some pretty good footy.
So that should be an entertaining one when someone's explaining why they've dropped 6 players. But chat, you've been amazing. We've really enjoyed your feedback. Make sure you go and give Ian some love. I've got the VFL wrap tomorrow morning. That's already recorded. And then you'll see me on the selection table with Ian and the boys. So much love, peace, love and light. See you next week. Thank you very much, everyone.